Hello, everyone. I'm Rory McGuire. I'm a professor and extension specialist at Virginia Tech, and I am for the soil because the soil is our future. We don't make any more of it. If you eat, you rely on soil.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii. Our episode this week is all about soil management principles with the focus on management and ethics. We welcome to the show this week Ari Weinzweig, who is a self-described lapsed anarchist. He is a successful entrepreneur, an author, founder of an organization called the Zingerman Community of Businesses, and widely followed by thousands of people for articulating his principles on leadership, training, and management. Yeah, this episode is going to be a little bit different. Also joining us will be Mary Sketch with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition and Eric Benfelt, a specialist in community viability with Virginia Cooperative Extension. Let's go to the show. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of For the Soil, a Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii. Eric and Mary, I am excited about the topic that we're going to be discussing today. That's because in this episode, we go way beyond all the technical matter like organic matter content and cover crops, etc. Instead, we're going to be talking about soil management, the ethics of soil management, and why soil health is critical to not only farmers, but to the community at large. We welcome to our show a gentleman who is focused on, well, Eric, I'm going to let you do the honor of introducing our special guest today.
Well, thank you, Jeff. We're pleased to have Ari Weinzweig with us. Ari's the CEO and co-founder of Zingerman's Delicatessen and Community of Businesses. And he's also a very much a prolific writer on issues of organizational leadership, customer service, self-management, and certainly visioning. And I think most recently, even some of his articles have focused on soil or the soil ecosystem as a metaphor for organizational culture, and also the role of soil humus as a metaphor for humility and the need for servant leadership. And for those people that are not familiar with Zingerman's Community of Business, it is located in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and has been operating since 1982. And just a little bit of my introduction to Zingerman's. A good friend of mine, Katrina Dito, as she was preparing to launch her business in 2008, had shared a book called Small Giants by Bo Burlingham. And that highlighted 14 businesses across the country that really chose to stay small, but really focus on greatness. And that was an introduction to Zingerman's, and was very intrigued by their philosophy as well as their vision for the business and really investing in the community and at large in Ann Arbor. And since that time, I've read a number of books by Ari. And with this idea for the soil, there's so many things that we can be against in this day and time, but Ari speaks a lot about attitude and perspective and energy and hope and generosity. And I think Care for Soil certainly offers that. And then this would probably be about the most technical that we would be with this podcast, that seeing and recognizing soil as an ecosystem, we're really emphasizing 4 soil health principles: keep the soil covered, minimize soil disturbance, maximize living roots, and energize with diversity. And with a lot of Ari's thoughts and writings, I think the idea of habitat as being a safe place, recognizing the synergy and diversity available within an organization or within relationships as being so important. So I think the metaphor that Ari offers on the soil ecosystem and organizational culture is relevant to a lot of organizations, but specifically the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, as we try to move this idea for the soil and the for soil health principles forward. So really pleased to have Ari with us and having this conversation. So with that, Ari, if you'd like to share a little bit more about the history of Zingerman's community of business, I'm sure listeners would appreciate that as well, because I'm reading one of your most recent books, Working Through Hard Times. I realize the last year and a half particularly has been a tough and time where you really have to seek for hope and addressing your attitude as well. So just really welcome you.
Well, thank you. It's an honor to be here. I feel in a good way. You mentioned humility, so I'm not a farmer and I am not a scientist. So I'm following the metaphor, walking in strange territory. So I have enormous respect for the people who do that work really every day, and I hope what I can share metaphorically, at least, is of some value to the people who have been studying this for lifetimes and at least put up with my own layperson's interpretations of things. But thank you, Eric. So we're in Ann Arbor, as you said. University of Michigan is sort of at the core of the town, although there's more to the town than just the university. And I came here to go to school at U of M and studied the opposite of soil science. I studied Russian history, and I grew up in Chicago, so I don't even know if we even barely saw farms other than sort of driving, through the countryside, and it would have been all pretty much monocrop settings back then. The main farm I saw was the one, I think, at the Museum of Science and Industry. So it was indoors. You didn't have to watch your step at all. And there was no dirt, no soil, no nothing, just very clean scientific farm. So that would have been from the early part of the second half of the 20th century when my mom used to take us down there. But anyway, I studied anarchism, as you know, in particular, after graduating with my history degree. There is, of course, little one can do with a history degree except go on and do something else, including go get another degree, which is what I was supposed to do, but I failed on that front. Mostly, I just knew I didn't want to move back home. No disrespect to my family, but in the context of ecosystem, it wasn't one that I wanted to get stuck back in. And so I decided I'd stay here in town. And one of my college roommates was waiting tables at a restaurant in Ann Arbor. So I went in there and applied for a job as a server, and they didn't call me back. So I went back and reapplied as a busser. And again, they said they'd call, but they didn't. So it had been about a month now, and I went back and offered to do anything, and they offered me a job washing dishes. So that's how I started in food. So I had no lifelong dream of food and cooking. My mom was a good person, but not a great cook. And I grew up on all the stuff that probably no one listening to this podcast still eats, but Kraft macaroni and cheese out of the box, Mrs. Paul's fish sticks, Pop-Tarts, Tang, sort of the opposite of the kind of food that we would like to create for the world today. But it all came from the supermarket in boxes, and I don't think I even really understood anything about real seasonality or any of that. So it's just been a lifelong learning for me to move to the other side of the continuum. Paul and I opened, my partner, Paul Saginaw, and I opened the Zingerman's Deli in 1982. The original space was 1,300 square feet, so pretty tiny. Just me and Paul and two employees. A lot of the Jewish food that he and I had grown up with in delis and him in Detroit. I mean, as I said, in Chicago, and then a little bit of what's now called specialty food. At the time was mostly just weird. Extra virgin olive oil is now in pretty much every moderately upscale supermarket in the country. But at the time, people would look at it and kind of go like, extra virgin? How could you be extra virgin? It was sort of they thought they were very funny. But anyway, we've worked our behinds off through many hard times. This isn't the only one. We're going to have our 40th anniversary In March of this year, March 15th, 1982, we opened. So March 15th, 2022 will be 40 years in an industry that is known for people going under in the first 18 months. So, and we've grown our organization, as you alluded, to create what we call a community of businesses. So everything's located here in the Ann Arbor area. I have a very strong belief about doing business in the community in which we're present. Very much aligned with a lot of like what Wendell Berry writes, and staying away from the more typical franchise and extend. I'm all for the extension work you do, but I'm not for the expansion work that businesses do, particularly where you just open in other cities. In my historical mindset, it gets a little too colonial for me, and it also in your world, it always feels a little bit like trying to run a farm in Michigan from an office in New York. Like you call in. And that works in the mid 20th century industrial model, where you just calling the guy and telling him what to spray based on somebody else's statistics, every month. But when you really need to be standing in the soil like you and I would like to be, it doesn't really work. So we're here in town. I mean, I'm sitting in one of our businesses now. I've been in another one already this morning, and I'll be in some other ones later today, and working the floor at Zingerman's Roadhouse tonight. So the idea is to really know the customers and know the community and adapt what we do to where we are. We're pretty big by a lot of people whose listening standards. We're pretty tiny compared to, big company standards, but we furloughed about 275 people, as you said, when the pandemic started, out of about 700, and we're working our way back towards that again. I could say we have the deli has grown, expanded 3 times over the years. We have a bakery where we actually started milling a lot of our own grain 4 or 5 years ago. We have a coffee roasting, little artisan candy business. Zing Train, our training business, where we teach our methodologies on leadership and stuff, is where I'm sitting right now. Zingerman's Roadhouse is all sit down regional American food. Miss Kim is a little regional Korean restaurant. Cornman Farms is an 1834 farmhouse and 1837 barn that we renovated, and we do events out there. And we have a little food tour business, which is a really bad business to be in during a pandemic. That takes you to Europe. And I should say too that I live with a farmer, so she's small, does all heirlooms, all organic, without certification, all grown from seed, all hand watered, and she does some nice stuff. So I get the benefit of eating her food every night at home.
Well, thank you, Ari. And I'm also a history major from James Madison University. And when I went back to school at James Madison University, one of my first jobs was as a dishwasher, busser, and host at a family restaurant in Harrisonburg, Virginia. So as I was reading your recent pamphlet, I saw a connection there. Ari, through the years, you've developed what you have called natural laws of business and a number of secrets. And I think that really goes well with this idea of soil health principles or natural principles of soil management as an ecosystem. I was curious how you came up with this metaphor for the soil ecosystem and ways to foster organizational culture.
Yeah, good question. So backing up, the idea of natural laws of business came from Paul, my partner, who used to talk about it in a looser form, just in the belief, which I share, which is that there's just certain laws, let's say like gravity, that all healthy organizations live by. And that could be, in our case, a food business, but it could be a university or an academic department. It could be a farm. It could be a jazz band or a basketball team or a church. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it's all healthy organizations live in harmony with those. So I took that idea, I don't know, it's probably 12 years ago, and I started to put down concrete items on that list, and I came up with 12. I'm actually working on a list of 12 more because I keep learning more. But like I said, I mean, it's like gravity. So how they play out in each ecosystem is slightly different. So Fritjof Capra, who's a very interesting writer, had a beautiful little quote. He just basically said that the water goes down in all ecosystems, but exactly how it goes down depends on the rocks and where it's at. So that's where natural laws came from. The idea of the ecosystem came over time, especially as I was working on part 4 in the Zingerman's Guide to Good Leading series, which is about beliefs. So not sports, religion, and politics, but what we believe about soil management, about food, about podcasts, about people, about history majors, about everything from race to whatever. So I started to look at beliefs as the root system of our lives, because although you can't see them, I started to realize from studying that everything we do is based on what we believe, and that beliefs are not genetic, they're all learned. And so unhelpful negative beliefs are essentially like weeds, and helpful positive beliefs are what we're trying to grow, right? So the ecosystem evolved from there, and cultural soil was the next piece that I started to look at, and it's gone into all sorts of things, but I'll stop there for the moment.
I'm going to jump in here, and we're going to continue this conversation in another episode of For the Soil Conversation. Ari, we've got a lot of questions to ask you, and Mary, we haven't even gotten you into the conversation yet. We're going to do that, I promise. But we do like to highlight one of the 4 core principles of soil health in each episode. Today, I'm going to mention that I practiced one of those principles in my own backyard vegetable garden this week, and I planted a cover crop of annual ryegrass in my raised bed garden. And then when all the leaves come off the trees, I'll put those leaves on top of the raised beds, and hopefully that'll provide an ideal environment for earthworms and other soil organisms. So we encourage all of our listeners to practice these principles of soil management. Keep your soil covered, plant a cover crop in your backyard vegetable garden this fall. And of course, I would like to challenge each of our listeners to take a pledge to improve the soil health in your own world, whether it be your backyard garden, a 400-acre row crop operation, or maybe even in your fruit orchard. You can take that pledge by visiting our website at forthesoil.org, and that is the digit 4, thesoil.org. Well, Eric, Mary, and Ari, it has been a pleasure having you on this episode of For the Soil. We will continue our conversation in the next episode, but thank you, all 3 of you, for joining us.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Jeff.
For the Soil, a Conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the U.S. Department of Agriculture's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. And if you have a specific question about soil health, just contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of The Flip Charts and Mr. Ruiz. All rights reserved. For the Soil, a Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii.